So, am I audible? Yeah, thanks. So, what is introduction to Microsoft Azure? Before that, I want to give a glimpse of where we are when we are starting, when we are saying we are doing a solution architect course on cloud computing. So, cloud computing basically we have a fundamental exam which is AZ 900. We have developer certificate which is AZ 204, and we have a design certificate which is AZ 305, which is again one of the most cutting edge technologies which you are using across different domains. So we are here part of discussing AZ 305, which is designing Microsoft solutions. And we are going to have a little bit introduction on Microsoft Azure. What is Microsoft Azure? Why we are using cloud computing? And for basically in this course, we have a lot of other things like what is ARM, Azure Storage, what is Introduction to Azure Storage, what is Azure Virtual Machines, what is the benefits of using VM. So we have this in the latest chapter as well. If we someone wants to take a full complete course, we also offer that. So this is a little bit glimpse of what we offer, and along with that the practical session like creating each and every resource in the portal, Azure portal. So we have that as well. So how we do step by step, we will be discussing that in the course as well. So moving on. So guys, I will be asking a little bit. So everyone here knows a little bit about Microsoft Azure, or they're totally new. Are they totally new, or you already are aware basic understanding of cloud computing, or everybody is new here? Can I get a little bit idea? So you can type new N if you're new, or if you're experienced, you can type E, N or E would work fine for me. Okay, yeah. So people are new here. So we will, yeah, new. Okay. So no worries. It will be an interesting module, and we will be going a little slowly, and I will just give you an idea, and no need to worry on this introduction to Microsoft Azure. So, like, if you want to say, this is, yeah, what is the primary content which we are going to discuss in this module? Introduction to cloud computing. Like, what is cloud computing? If we want to tell in a general terms to a person who is not aware of cloud computing or is not coming from that technical background, and he wants to upskill himself or herself in cloud computing. So, how do we make him or her understand what is cloud computing? Not just going with the jargons of that. What are the benefits of cloud? Like, why people are shifting or switching from the original, how their legacy softwares to cloud computing? What are the benefits? What is Microsoft Azure? Like, we have various vendors. So, like, we are discussing here Microsoft Azure. So, what is that? What are various cloud models? Like, what are the different types of models or services we are having in Microsoft Azure, and various services, infrastructure, software platform like that. So, coming to our primary thing, what is cloud computing in a nutshell? If I want to ask you or tell a person who is very new, so if you understand, like at home, we have a lot of utilities, like we have electricity coming at our home, we have gas, we have power, we have water supply. So these are all services which we are using at home, but we are not aware of the intricacies, like how it is getting generated, how the power is getting generated, how we are getting the power supply, or we are getting the water. We are just using it as a utility. So what we're trying to say here, or analogy which I'm trying to give is, like suppose we are using a socket to plug in our charger, but we are not aware how that electricity is getting generated. We are just using that, right? So basically it is coming as a service to us, utility. Similarly, we have a lot of utilities at home, that is, as I mentioned, we have water supply, gas supply. These are all utilities. So we are virtualized, we are not aware of the internal working of that utility. That is possible because electricity is virtualized. It is readily available at the wall socket and we just use it. We just plug in and use it. So technologies like cluster, grid, and now cloud computing is one of the example of how we are saying we are not aware how we are generating that renting service. Cloud provider gives us the service and we are just using it. So that is a utility which big players like Microsoft, Amazon, IBM has its own private cloud. So some of the cloud benefits which can take people who are providers from them. We have huge data centers. You must have heard about the term data center. So what is that? They're basically huge servers they have taken and it provides us with huge computing powers. They have everything related to hardware and we are not worried about infrastructure at all. So that is the shift which we are going to say, like everything here as I mentioned in we are using as a utility. It's consumers pay providers. Basically what is consumer pay providers meaning? We are using it as a consumption model. You must have heard about the subscription based. Now we are using everything is subscription based, everything is consumer consumption based. Like people are only paying for what they're using. They are not going to pay for everything, like from hardware or what you have in house. A lot of infrastructure cost has been reduced. We are only paying for the consumption based utility. So as I mentioned, that is the main principle behind the model, and there are we'll be discussing. So earlier it was more of a mainframe, and now we are moving into cloud. Earlier it was more of a infrastructure based, everything we had to consume, we have to buy it. Now it is more on demand. What is on demand? Like basically when there is more demand of a service. Suppose application you created a website where you have a rush of heavy traffic coming from users and you want to scale up. So that is on demand, you have to scale up. And when there is no high demand, you can scale down. You don't need that kind of memory or storage. So that is like based on the consumer's demand. It is uh, sometimes unpredictable computing needs come, so we can take the benefits of cloud. It is more of we are switching from in-house generated computing power into utility supplied computing resources delivered over the internet. This we have already discussed. Like whatever in-house infrastructure services which you were having previously, like if you want to start a new company, we needed everything in-house and there was a lot of upfront cost involved. But now, due to the advent of internet and everything provided as a service, we are not worried about the infrastructure which is provided. We are more worried about the operational costs, like how we need to maintain and how we need to uh, take the application to the cloud. We are not worried about the infrastructure. So now, as we have got a little bit glimpse of, in a general terms, what we say is the cloud computing. So now, cloud computing is a renting service which we can use in minutes. So everything, if you're creating an application, supposing in a software application in Visual Studio, and you want to deploy that in cloud, you can do that in minutes. It will not take you hours and hours of setting up. You can do that in minutes. So it is saving a lot of time, and you don't have to pay if you're not using it. You only pay if you're using that service at a very small cost. So that is one of the major reasons people are migrating from on-premise to cloud. What was before cloud computing? You have to own the equipment. That was for sure. There was a massive upfront cost, as we discussed, and used to consume a lot of time. Now you're saving a lot of time and you're saving a lot of money here. Or we would rent the equipment. Either if you're not buying the equipment, you had to pay for the whole equipment. Either you're using it or not, you have to pay the rent. It would have taken a long time commitment. So it is more of a sharing model. Today we say like there are what players we have in market. We have Amazon, we have Azure, and we have GCP Cloud, Google Cloud Platform. So the share in the market for AWS is 67%. Now Azure is also slowly getting up into higher numbers, and like already crossed 60%. And GCP Google Cloud Platform is 20%. So this is around about share of various services which you are having in market based on the provider. And also there are these are the some of the big players, but also there are some private clouds. So we will further discuss in the module like what is the difference between a public cloud and a private cloud. Where do we use a public cloud and where do we use a private cloud? The private cloud mostly, as you can understand, it is created by individual company or organization for some sensitive data. Like IBM has its own private cloud. Oracle is another company you must have heard. It has its own product database. So it has their own, because they can't rely on public cloud where every resource is shared among individuals. So they can't rely on that. So they have their own private cloud, Alibaba Cloud. These are some of the examples of private cloud. So guys, we will take the question answers in the end. If you have any, you can just note down and we will discuss, take in the last 5-10 minutes, we'll take the questions. So moving on, we have understood the what is cloud computing and the market share that is it is having. Now we'll move towards the benefits of cloud. There is no capital expenditure and we are moving toward OPEX. CapEx is reduced and it is more operational based expenditure. Providers of IT services achieve better operational cost. Hardware and software infrastructure are built to provide multiple solutions and serve many users, thus increasing efficiency and more return of investment at lower cost of ownership. What does that mean? As we have already discussed, the networking requirements, the physical infrastructure, the servers, the modems, the internet, everything was capital expenditure for an organization. But now we are slowly moving to the operational expenditure. Like we are only spending for the deploying our application or maintaining our application. We are not worried about the physical infrastructure. This is the difference benefits which you are having. It's highly available. Now the SLA provided by Microsoft, since we are discussing about Microsoft Azure, the SLA provided, a service level agreement provided, is 99.9%. 0.01% is like when you have a like disaster or some kind of a happening which we can't control, that is there, but 99.9% availability is provided by cloud, Microsoft Azure, and it's highly scalable. We know when we see there's a live streaming happening, supposing, and there is a huge demand of traffic, like a final match is there, and you need more memory, and that time you can scale up. So that cloud provider gives you the flexibility of scaling out, giving you more servers and more memory. It is more reliable, you can rely on it, and you can have backups and update domains where you can save your data on different servers. Security and governance is highly secured. It's having a single sign-on and various features where you can save your data and be secured about it. Manageable, it's highly manageable, where multiple API management portals and tools where you can manage your applications. So what is Microsoft Azure? It's a platform as a service. It's a public cloud computing platform. And what is platform as a service? It is both infrastructure as well as platform as a service. So infrastructure as a service, as we discussed, more of a storage, load balancer kind of a thing where we're not worried about the physical hardware. Platform as a service is it also provides you the application layer, basically the OS, operating system, or the software. You're not worried about how you're going to download the software, install the software. Azure does it for you. So that we can say is a platform as a service. Infrastructure we already discussed. So Azure is also example of PaaS as well as IaaS. It's a public cloud. It's the most common type of a model. Public cloud meaning we can have either I can have some resources deployed in cloud. You can also deploy your application in a cloud. So it is a shared kind of a utility. Many multiple users can use the resources of a public cloud. Whereas, yeah, it's a very most commonly used model. It has shared hardware that everybody can use, and other companies can also have a common sharing resources kind of a thing. It has no capital expenditure, only operational expenditure. As we discussed, most of the benefits of cloud itself is that we don't need capital expenditure, we don't need to install hardware and servers and network layers, so we are not worried about that. So no capital expenditure and only operational expenditure. So yeah, so infrastructure owned by, so as we know, who is the owner of the infrastructure? The cloud provider. And we don't have control over the infrastructure. All the cloud benefits will apply. So there is something called private cloud. As we discussed, everything we can't keep in public cloud. There is sensitive data, like supposing a country like a US will not definitely want to keep its defense resources in China, their servers. So they would want something very private because there is some sensitive data like banking details or insurance, healthcare. So these kind of sensitive information one will not want to keep in a public cloud where other players are also sharing their data. So we would prefer for private, although it's more expensive, because in private cloud you will have to, a company will have to invest a little bit more. instead of the public cloud. But it is more when you have that kind of sensitive data which you can't keep in a public cloud, then you'll definitely have to go for your own data center, which many companies are doing. Like we discussed, IBM is doing, Oracle is doing, Alibaba is doing. So many big players have their own cloud. So that is private cloud, building their own data center. And as we discussed, it's basically in special kind of situations where legal or any compliance issues are there, where the user or the end user does not want his or her data to be, by handled by anybody, like shared between other resources. So it'll have complete control of all aspects. Definitely, when you are spending and creating your own data center, you would want the complete control of all the aspects of that uh, application. Capital expenditure applies. Yes, there is a difference between public and a private cloud. That in public cloud, we are not saying we are giving any capital expenditure, but when we are going for a private cloud, definitely capital expenditure would apply, and complete responsibility for hardware and security. Since you are the creator of your own data center, then definitely the responsibility is yours now. And what is a hybrid cloud? As the name itself suggests, hybrid will count for is a mix. It's more of private and public. Then you go for a hybrid cloud. Sometimes you have a cost budget issues where you can't openly go for a fully private cloud. Then you go for a public, as combination of public and private, due to some critical resources need to be kept in private and not shown to other players, only owned by the customer. Others are used from the public cloud. So it's a combination of capex and opex. Example, hosting an app service with computing from cloud, data is stored in the on-premise database. So this is a basic example where you, in multiple projects also, like we have also seen, like some projects, client is not looking for everything in cloud. Sometimes they want to keep your data inside your own database in on-premise, and some of the data they want to keep in cloud. So it's a combination of both. And as we have discussed, the basic cloud models are public, private, and hybrid. But everything in cloud now is a service. Either it's a compute service, storage service, database service, software services. So everything in cloud is more of a service based. So we will see what are the examples of compute services, like a VM. Storage service will have a blob kind of an example. Database will have Cosmos DB, the key value pair. So it's huge. And we have everything in Azure as a service. We have more than 100 plus connectors. We have multiple services, software as a service. So what is the infrastructure as a service? It's the basic layer where we are saying the cloud provider or the cloud vendor is responsible for providing the hardware, the storage, the memory, the network layer, and we are not worried about how we will, install all these services in our system. So that is infrastructure service. Example, renting of hardware or infrastructure like servers, storage. Example is virtual machines. So you must have heard about the term virtual machine. It is just like how we use a system here in a local system which we use. It is related to that. We will specify the memory. So if I want to just show you, but in the free subscription, I think you have to take a basic plan to see. But we can see here VM can create a VM. Yeah, you have to create a resource group. Yeah. So VM is just, you will just create a resource group here and you will specify what virtual storage provider or Windows you need, a Linux OS you need. You'll specify these details here in the Microsoft Azure portal, and then you will deploy this resource in the portal. After that, you can log in and it will act as an actual computer, as if you have logged in into a desktop system. It will be like that. It is a virtual machine which will behave in the similar way how your other machines work. So coming back, now the responsibilities, as we discussed in the infrastructure as a service, the responsibility is always with the, like divided between customer and vendor. So what are the responsibilities of cloud provider and what are the responsibility of customer? Definitely for cloud provider, we would say it will handle the physical network, the physical data center, physical host, everything related to networking, storage, and the consumer or the customer will only be responsible for information and data. That is for sure. So I'm telling in very basic terms. We are not going very in a high level terminologies. We are just saying that definitely if we are telling that cloud provider is giving up the infrastructure, so it is he is responsible for providing all the hardware related physical network storage related things, and as a customer, as a consumer, we are only responsible for the data and information and accounts and identities, which we will see like where respect to users and what are the kind of access which it is having, single sign-on or a managed identities. So these kind of things we will be responsible for, and account and responsibility for the cloud provider will be more related to the physical networking and physical data center. Moving on, we have something called platform as a service. So as we discussed, Azure also acts like a platform as a service. So example would be something like a logic app, function app. Like we have created a supposing web application, how we used to create in a native setup. We used to create a .NET MVC web application. But now if we want to use the cloud benefits, so we need to publish our web application to the cloud. That container is a web app. Like web app will be a container in cloud. We'll create a web app. It will act as a container. And when we publish our web application to that container, we call it as a platform as a service. Like we did not install anything in Azure to deploy or publish our application. So it was done itself by the cloud. So we create a platform there and we just publish our web application to the cloud. That is a platform as a service. We are not worried about the OS layer, the virtualized layer, or what we say like how to install the software part, operating system part. We are not worried about that. The cloud vendor or provider takes care of that. A cloud platform offers an environment on which developers create and deploy applications. Do not necessarily need to know how many processors or how much memory that applications will be using. It will be taken care by the cloud provider. As we discussed the example, Azure Logic Apps, function apps, hardware fully managed by Azure. So when we say about platform as a service, it is an addition to what we discussed in infrastructure as a service. So platform as a service will definitely intake all the benefits of IaaS, infrastructure as a service. So that's why it's saying the hardware is fully managed by Azure. So on top of that, on top of the benefits which we have in infrastructure, there is an add-on of platform as a service. So definitely when we say platform as a service, the default benefits of IaaS apply. Whatever benefits were there for infrastructure as a service will apply. And addition to that, we will have application, the software installation is not required, and the platform it's providing for creating and deploying an application. It is a more on top of IaaS. It does not require any hardware configuration. It reduces the administration cost. So more examples are Cosmos DB, Azure App Service. Like what example I gave was example of Azure App Service. Web App is a app service. Logic App is again an app service. And these are all examples of platform as a service. It provides a container. It kind of provides a container where you can deploy or publish your applications and use it and maintain it. It is giving you an environment to develop and deploy applications. Definitely, we are saying it's a Azure PaaS service. It's a pay as you go. It's a consumption based. If you're paying only for the only amount what you're using it, so that is the benefit. Now, as we discussed, there are responsibility between customer and cloud provider. So now there are addition to the hardware, physical host, physical network, and data center. There is one more layer which is getting added, the OS layer, operating system, applications, and identity. These are some of the add-ons from the infrastructure as a service, I'd say. And what are the responsibility of customers? We have information, data, device, accounts. So these are some of the responsibilities of customer. Now there is more advanced, like when we say software as a service. So as the name itself suggests, software service as a service, we say we're not worried about the infrastructure, we are not worried about the platform as a service. Everything will be given, infrastructure will be given, and platform will be given. We just need to log in and use it. One of the example for this is Outlook 365 and DevOps. Like in when we say DevOps, we just use the URL portal.devops, whatever devops.com. We just browse the URL and we use the service. We are not installing anything. We are not worried about the hardware. So that is an example of software as a service. Again, Microsoft 365, Outlook 365. If you want to configure, we just use the browser link URL and we use it in the browser. We are not installing any plugins or configuration configuration or any hardware setup. We're just logging in and using it. No installation is required. That is the example of software as a service. Salesforce is again a CRM software for SaaS, Outlook 365, and as I mentioned, DevOps is also an example of SaaS service. So there are a lot of companies which are releasing products and creating products which are acting as a software service. Salesforce is CRM software, which is an example of software as a service. We don't need to install anything, so it is all provided by the cloud vendor. Application is not developed but only configured. Responsibility of the customer is only data, device, accounts, and identities. We are only logging, so we are responsible for the logging credentials. Responsibility of cloud provider is physical, operating system, and top of that, networks. So these are all coming under software as a service as an add-on. So now we have completed the part one of introduction. Now the second part, basically part of this introduction, is how we use in the more of uh, portal based. Like as we know, we need a UI platform where we can create and deploy our services. So there are a lot of subscriptions. Like there is a free subscription which is offered by Microsoft. Like 1 month you have to use it free, and then you will get $200 of credits in your account. If you create a Microsoft account, you will get free subscription for 1 month where you'll get $200 of credits. Once you complete 1 month, then based on your creation of resources, you will be charged. So you have to take any subscription to create any resource here. We will be discussing like what we are doing here in the practical part. What are the meaning of different terminologies? So yeah, this is also part of introduction, but it's a module, part two of module one. What is the Azure portal? How does it look like? What are the key Azure terms used, and setting up Azure? How do you set up Azure CLI? What is CLI, command line interface? What is Azure PowerShell? So there are various ways of creating resources in Azure. As up until now, what we were seeing is UI based. Like what we see here is a portal based UI kind of a thing. But there are other ways also where you can create your Azure resources. It's not just portal. You'll see, so this is how portal looks like. You can also try from your end creating a Microsoft account and then logging into portal.azure.com. So I will also give you my number and contact information. So if you want to reach out to me, we can also create a community and we can discuss various issues which you're facing. So this is the how a portal looks like. Once you get the Microsoft account, a free subscription for 1 month, and then based on your usage, you'll be charged. Or if you're not using it, you'll not be charged. It'll it has resource groups, storage account, Azure Active Directory, DevOps, everything. So, what is Azure Portal? It's a one-stop shop for everything to do with your cloud subscription. So, as I mentioned, everything is cloud is subscription based. It's a more of a like whatever service you want to use in Azure, you have to give subscription account money for that. It will not be free. It will all be subscription based. But so you have to be aware of what service you're using and how much money you're paying. So that kind of thing. You can create new resources. As we discussed, there are many services which Microsoft Azure offers. So you can use them once you have the subscription. Without the subscription, without creating the subscription, it will not allow you. You can create a resource group, and inside that resource group, you can create resources. So, guys, no need to get overwhelmed by the what we are discussing. This is very basic thing we are going. I just want to give you a little bit practical knowledge from the theoretical one also, which we had discussed. So it is just for your knowledge and your for your trying purpose. If you want to try at home what we discussed, so that you remember. And for that purpose, we are going a little bit ahead of part one of the module, since you will be also trying, and if you have interest you can also enroll for the course. So we are just going slowly with the practical thing. Theoretical, you have got understanding. Yes, cloud computing is this. We can have huge benefits, but how do we do it? Unless and until you will not get that kind of exposure, you will not be able to supposing you want to give interviews in companies or you want to apply for a certificate course. So even if you do practically, then only you will have a more confidence to give exam. So for that purpose, we are going here. Otherwise, uh, we theoretically we are done with the introduction to cloud computing. It is the basic foundation. We have prepared the module like just for giving an overview. Like in the detail, we will be discussing in the further chapters. But the basic thing is this is what cloud computing is basically. It has these many models, these many services, and how does it look like, and how do we do it is a basic thing, I think. Then only you will be able to do on your own. So as we were discussing, everything in Azure is subscription based, and I will also provide my contact details. No need to worry. So create resource groups for creating objects, manage your virtual infrastructure, monitor your health. So it's not like in Azure you just created a resource and you are not aware how much you're getting charged and how you can monitor your resources which you are deployed. You can monitor everything. So Azure provides you all the services, Azure Monitor, Azure Application Insights, where you can get a idea dashboard kind of a thing where you can track your services and which services has failed and why it has failed. So you can all get to see that in that application insights and Azure Monitor. So Cloud Azure also provides you with that. You can also check your pricing. So everything you can check there. As we discussed, you can also scale up based on the availability of resources and application. You can scale out when it's high availability and your resources always available. So there are some of the key Azure terms which you need to be aware. Basic terms like what is a subscription, resource group, tenant. Tenant is basically when you set up a subscription, you're creating a tenant. Subscription, as I mentioned, it can be a basic plan, it can be an enterprise plan. If you're working for an enterprise, you're working big projects in an enterprise, you go for an enterprise plan. So there are different subscription based on the usage. So that is called a tenant. So everything will come under the tenant. Then subscription. You can have one or several subscription linked to your Azure tenant, or one subscription can be used to pay for multiple tenants, like usually happens in a big enterprises or the clients for which we are working. So they will have multiple tenants, like some for the managers. Some management team will also be looking into how they monitor the dashboards, the analytics part, and the developers will be monitoring the deployment and monitoring part, maintenance team and CI/CD DevOps team. So for them also, they created a subscription based thing. It is more of a pay as you go model, so you can also check the costing based on that. So resource is what? Resource is the logical grouping of objects and resources. So once you create a subscription, the tenant, then there is hierarchy is there, resource group. After resource group, so you want to record, is it? So for recording, can you drop me an email and message me? I'll surely share with you. Is it fine? Because everybody will ask, right, Victoria? Everybody will ask for recording. I'll definitely share the recording on email which is you have given. You can also drop me an email after the session. We will discuss in the yeah, we will discuss in the last 5-10 minutes. So no need to worry. I will share the recording of this session and PPT as well. You can message me on my number and my email. I will provide you. Can we wait for last 10 minutes so that we just complete the session, and then we will have a quick question and answers, and then if you're not, then we will be connecting over contact and email. Definitely. We will be surely we will be creating a community. Yes, yes. You can send me on this our official email ID. Okay. I thought so. Guys, wait for a few minutes. I would request. Yeah, I will share. No need to worry. So these are some of the things like so we just we were in the flow. So everything in Azure is a subscription based. One is the tenant where you define the subscription. So developer will have their own subscription, manager will have their own subscription, and like where higher management leadership will have their own subscription. So It all sometimes come under a tenant when an enterprise is taking a subscription. But when you're taking as an individual, you'll definitely go for a basic developer plan. No need to go for an enterprise subscription. So you need to take it because everything is costing. Everything is cost here. So you need to maintain and be aware of the costing here. So moving on, inside that resource group, once you create a tenant subscription, then you have a resource group. Once you create the resource group, you will start creating your resources, whether you want to create a storage, blobs, queues, web app, container, Cosmos DB, Logic app. So everything will be coming under that umbrella of resource group. Resource objects, as we discussed, there are a lot of resource objects like functions, Logic app, web apps, VMs, blobs, storage, and variety of others. As we discussed the basic, we are going to go step by step. We will also share this PPT. As a first time user, the following needs to be done. You have to create an email account. It has to be, you have to create an email account, Microsoft account. After creating a Microsoft account, you have to go to portal.azure.com. I will mention, it is not mentioned here. I'll mention in the chat. After creating Microsoft portal, you have to go to portal.azure.com. Okay. So once you have the Microsoft account, you will be asked to give your details of the card. You can provide any, nowadays they're asking to provide any debit card also. In our times, it was more of a credit card, but now I saw they're also asking to give debit card details, but it will not charge you for first month. For your practice, for your practical things, you can use it. 1 month it will be free. Second month, they will start charging you for whatever resources you're deploying. If you want that Azure, Microsoft should not charge from you, then you need to stop the resource or need to delete the resource at once. You don't need to keep it in portal. For them to charge you, you need to delete the resource what you create. But if you're not, if you're using it, then definitely from second month they'll charge you. First month it will be free. From second month they'll start charging you if you're not deleting the resource. So be aware of that. Track your expenses and start using it. No need to worry. And yeah, I have mentioned portal.azure.com. Start from there. It will look like this. It will ask you to sign in and you log in that time. Look like this. Free account will be created for 30 days. It's a pay as you go service. Amazon attachment subscription. So it will be looking like this as we saw already. It will be looking like this. Cost analysis, you can check cost analysis, cost alerts, budgets, and various other things. It is showing you the first key sign is subscription. Visual Studio, they have taken enterprise subscription. So you can also check for other subscriptions, standard subscription or free subscription. It also explains the spending. So subscription definitely is related to your spending, how much you're spending. It's basically related to that, and it'll explain you how much you're spending on your resources. So that you can calculate. Now we discussed about portal. Up until now, whatever discussed from past 40, 30, 35 minutes, what we're discussing have been about Azure portal, the UI model, what we see in the portal, how we create resources in the portal. But now the same resources we are saying, if we want to deploy, supposing we can also use command line interface, CLI. CLI Cloud Shell is also it's present in the form of Cloud Shell. Like you see here, there's something called Cloud Shell. If you click on this arrow kind of a thing and you click on that, it will tell you welcome to Cloud Azure. So for this also you need subscription. For the free account, you can't just use it. But you got my point. Like apart from using the portal model, we second thing where we can create our Azure resources is Azure CLI, command line interface. Because some people are more familiar with using scripts. They want to just type a script and just run the server instead of creating step by step. Some people feel more familiar in creating a portal. Like me, I'm more comfortable creating an UI than a PowerShell script. But PowerShell script is very, very useful when you're having to create a bulk of resources or supposing you're doing a migration of bulk of applications. So that time, instead of you can't migrate hundreds of application using UI or hundreds of resources. So that time you need to go for PowerShell scripting. It's very good if you are familiar with that. And the third is PowerShell. So one is Azure CLI and third is PowerShell. Azure CLI, for the case of Azure CLI, you're not installing anything. We just went to the portal and we clicked on Azure CLI and it showed at the bottom of the page. But in case of Azure PowerShell, definitely you need to install PowerShell in your system. One second. So in case of PowerShell, definitely you want to install in your system. You can't just use the portal like we did. We saw the CLI thing. We just clicked on it and it showed in the portal. But in case of PowerShell, we need to install PowerShell 7.2 on a Windows machine. And after downloading the MSI package, start the installation. So these things, if you're already working in a enterprise, then they will give you the authentication, everything you can install in your machine, no need to worry. But it's just for your reference. If somebody is more curious to learn about PowerShell and they want to create resources PowerShell, you can do that. So there's some commands. If you want to go for PowerShell commands, you have to either you'll get in Google, but you need to understand like why we are doing it. Like supposing for creating a resource group. Now, how do you create a resource group using a PowerShell command? First, you need to use Connect AZ account. It'll ask you the login credentials. Like the same way you log in into the portal, the same way you can connect in the PowerShell. So you after doing that, you can just use the command for it is a you can check in the create a virtual machine also. Like for creating a virtual machine, you need to specify which region you are selecting, what is the resource group. So everything you need to mention and you can create. So this command you will get in the Google. I've just given a simple command connect. So like that for creating a virtual machine also you will have. So guys, now we are done with the practical understanding the key terminologies like what we are using in cloud computing. The theoretical part also we done. So is it we are almost done with the session. So now you can start with the Q&A. And before that, I just want to give you for your reference for the recordings and PPTs. You can message me or you can mail me. I'll definitely share because we're gonna be associated. We are having a lot of services as well. So we are beginning with cloud, but in future we will be rolling out a lot of services on a very minimal pricing. And so you can get in touch. We'll be conducting more of a sessions. It'll be free webinars as well. And some things we will also be connecting with some other providers who are familiar with finance. Some are familiar with accounting. So we will connect you with those professors as well. They're already teaching in some big universities. So this is just the beginning. We are saying e-certificate we are currently we don't have, but soon we will have a tie-up with the Research Foundation of India. So we are waiting for that, and then we can, at this moment, will not be able to do it. But you can definitely connect with me for PPT and recordings. And
Okay.
yeah,
I don't have it.
yeah. Tell me, who is this? So did you guys got my you have, right? Yeah, so this is Vijaya. Vijaya, we are in the contact with the Research Foundation of India, and we are yet awaiting, like, we cannot just give you certificate, right? It has to be authenticated from a government body. So it will take time, but right now we are saying we'll just provide you with the theoretical and practical sessions and recordings and PPT, which will help you in certificates and cracking the interviews. So is it fine? Am I audible? Yeah. So Vijaya, am I audible? We'll stop the recording, guys. We'll stop the recording.